How was everybody this morning? Does anybody have a hard time getting up this morning? I set the alarm for 6 o'clock. I woke up and I just watched it crawl around to 7 until finally I had to get up. So I think daylight savings time, we should always fall back. We should always gain an hour. And that might be confusing at first, but after a while, after 12 hours, we'll be right back to where we started from. Anyway, enough silliness. I want to talk to something about this morning that is very, very serious. As a matter of fact, it is the essence of our earthly existence, and that is relationships. Relationships are absolutely everything. It's your connection with reality. The only emotional experience you can have is through a relationship. There is nothing outside of relationships. You can't think of a single thing about yourself that doesn't include a relationship. If you're a man or a woman, it's your relationship with your gender. If you're a mother or father, it's relationship with the kids. A daughter or son, relationship with it's just all relationships. Therefore, relationships determine the quality of our lives. Would everybody agree? Whatever state the total of your relationships is in, that is the state or the condition that your life is going to be in. And we have a wonderful way of knowing when our relationships are on track or when they're not on track because nature alerts us by making us feel a certain way. If a relationship is not going good, if there's conflict, if there's hate, if there's envy, if there's resentment, whatever it might be, the negative feelings, the brain actually secretes a chemical that goes throughout the entire body and it makes us feel ill. It lowers our immune system. It decreases our sense of well-being. On the other hand, when we're thinking positive thoughts within a relationship and we feel really good and there's a sense of sharing and a sense of joy, the brain puts out what's called serotonin. And serotonin is the feel-good chemical. It makes us feel good to be engaged with somebody in a loving, kind, and compassionate way. If you left here today and you went out and you bestowed upon somebody an act of kindness, whatever that might be, the serotonin levels in that person's mind would increase. It'd actually make them feel better mentally, physically, and spiritually. Not only that, if you went out and did an act of kindness towards somebody, your serotonin levels would increase to exactly the same level as theirs. You get to feel good. Nature's way of saying, this is the way it was meant to be. We need to connect. We need to have a sense of oneness. We need to appreciate each other and give praise for each other. Now, if you went out and did an act of kindness this afternoon, the serotonin levels would increase in the one that received that kindness. Your serotonin levels would increase. But if there was somebody just standing beside you, watching on, their serotonin levels would increase. They would feel better. They would have a good feeling about what was taking place. So what does this tell us? It tells us if our relationships are in harmony, if there's a sense of oneness, a sense of respect, a sense of appreciation, it not only makes us feel good, but it makes the other party feel good. And the oneness comes about when two people join into that good feeling together. It's identical. They're having the same good experience. So the question is, if that's the case, the question is, why don't we do that? I mean, it doesn't seem that difficult. Why don't we just always have good feelings come out of our relationships and therefore have a life that feels really, really good? Why can't we consistently do that? Well, the reason is because we're students of life, not graduates. We're in the process of learning how to get along with each other. We're in the process of learning how to appreciate, respect, and even stand in the face of adversity and not react in a negative way. That's our lesson. So as we move through life and we find ourselves in those situations and circumstances where there's a very close relationship or whether it's a long-distance relationship and we're starting to have that ill feeling that comes about, and you all know that, when you're extremely angry or upset or resentful, you know you take on an ill feeling within your physical body. When we feel that, it means that we have to have some sort of a response that will reverse what is taking place. So I've asked 5 people to join me up here today to share with us what they feel one of the most important keys they've learned throughout their lifetime in regards to keeping relationships harmonious and loving and peaceful. And I'd like those people to come forward now. We have George Winechase, Bambi Shen, Sandra Campbell, Angie Slavin, and we didn't get Ed Nichols' name in the bulletin, and we're very sorry about that. But this is Ed Nickel, and we're going to start with him first. So let me get you a microphone. Testing. Okay, so the question is, what have you learned in your life that is really key, or really paramount in keeping your relationships very healthy and very harmonious?
Thank you. No, it's one of those questions that Duke asked early in the week, and I will tell you that the way I view relationships now as opposed to when I came here 12 years ago has completely changed. And I think the view I have of it, or what I want to focus on, is your relationship with you. I think in many of our interactions we discount ourselves. The word I like that I've heard a lot at this church, at Unity, is be authentic. And on my journey, I decided that it was time for me to be completely authentic. And I came out, as the term that's most often used, but I shared with everyone that was in my life that I was a gay man. And to be candid with you, that changed a lot of relationship dynamics instantly. And candidly, in some cases, it was far better than I imagined. In other cases, it has changed or transformed relationships that are different today than they were beforehand. But what I learned in the process is that I love the window that we all look at every time we're in here, but it's about love. And it's about loving yourself enough to honor yourself, to be who you are. And one of the words or the sayings that I've always loved is, no matter what makes you authentically who you are, the people that mind don't matter, and the people that matter don't mind. And I've really carried that with me, and so I share that with all of you because I hope that you love yourself enough to be true to yourself. And I think a community like this can always support you as you grow in your relationship with you, in your relationship with others. But I think it's about that true, authentic relationship with you. Give yourself a vote. Know that there are going to be relationships that, as you are true to yourself, they may change. And you can trust. Duke taught me long ago that, especially with family of origin as the scenario, or I love them all, but I love them all, some of them from afar. If that makes sense. And it helped me to understand that you can love some and honor them, but probably not stay in touch on a regular basis, and that's okay. So it's really about honoring you, and that's what I would share with you. I think it's important in your relationships to honor yourself. And the saying that I will leave you with is from Marianne Williamson. It came up on her post this week on Facebook, and she said, a relationship should be a gift exchange. And I really like that. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Angie Slavins, and when Duke asked me to talk today about healthy relationships, I thought, well, how ironic, because I don't feel like I've had that many healthy relationships in my life. But I also thought how serendipitous, because the last few months I have been taking quite a bit of time to explore this area of my life, and I thought, what a perfect opportunity to synthesize some of the things that I've been reading, some of the wise people I've been talking to, and to try to articulate this in a way that makes sense and hopefully makes sense to me, and also hopefully makes sense to you. When we're children, we accumulate a lot of pain. And the reason for this is because we don't understand it. We may experience an injustice in our life, and instead of shining the light of truth on that, we take that into ourselves and it becomes part of us. I've read a couple of great books. One was Don Miguel Ruiz called The Mastery of Love, and then pretty much anything by Eckhart Tolle talking about relationships. Don Miguel Ruiz talks about an emotional poison that we accumulate over time as children, either from our own personal experiences, but also from the collective unconscious. And Eckhart Tolle refers to it as the pain body. So we take on these things, and as children, we don't know how to shine the light on them. Instead of facing them and going into the fears, we actually practice avoidance. And this is when our ego starts to come in and start to try to protect us. It does this by identification with things, with people. Maybe this is how we develop unhealthy relationships, because we start to need something. We need someone else to make us happy. We need a substance to divert our attention. We need to separate ourselves from other people so that we can feel like we are someone important, so that these fears that are deep down inside of us, we know that we can still survive. And the ego deep down really knows that all things in this world are impermanent. And so that just serves to make it even stronger. And the only way we can dissolve this is to really shine the light onto the ego and to really start to see what we really are inside, that we are true love. And most of the time, unfortunately for most of us, this means some type of catastrophic event that causes all of our forms that we identify with to just come crashing down around us. And when that happens, it can actually be a miraculous event, because we can really truly see what we truly are, which is pure love. So when we experience this sense of peace and freedom in that type of a situation, we can see that this whole world is just designed to teach us to go inside, to teach us to find that relationship with ourselves, like Ed talked about. Everything in our world is changing, and if we have all these reminders to go inside to the changeless, to find ourselves, to truly love ourselves, then that's where we truly experience love and happy relationships, because it's the love expressing through us that really makes us feel love. It's not the getting the love from someone else or something else outside of ourselves. And the best example I have of this is when we are with animals, because we're not expecting anything from them. We just have pure, unconditional love for them. So when Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, so they shall inherit the kingdom of heaven," what he meant by poor in spirit is free from all this baggage, this emotional baggage, this egoic nature, this need to cling to things. Just the pure, true spirit of what we are. And the kingdom of heaven is that joy, that happiness of expressing love through ourselves. So I thank you very much. I wanted to end with one quote, which is, if we feel a sense of self-love and someone else loves us, we think, but of course. Thank you.
Well, I could stop right here and just say ditto. Ditto. You said, both of you spoke my heart as well. When I think about relationships, and there have been many in my life, I think about one word, and that is forgiveness. Not just forgiveness of whatever you feel may have occurred or whatever you think someone else may have done, but forgiving yourself most of all. Sometimes we don't do things, we think things. We meet someone for the first time and we form an opinion, and that opinion may be totally wrong. And we need to forgive ourselves and open our minds to reality, to truth. See that person through the eyes of God. See that person through your spirit. I remember my earliest experience with this forgiveness was a little girl by the name of Jan, who used to kick me all the way home. After everybody else had gone their separate ways, mine was the last street before Jan got to her street. and she was a bully. We hear a lot about bullies nowadays in schools. Well, this is an old thing. It goes back a long way. So Jan just made it her point to make me feel very uncomfortable and very unhappy. I was never a fighter, never the kind of kid that would hit someone or fight. I was always taught to love your neighbor as yourself, to be kind to those who despitefully use you. That was my mother's doctrine, and I believe that. I still do. Years later, at a class reunion, when we were adults, I would always avoid Jan, by the way. I wouldn't do anything to Jan, but I felt very uncomfortable, even as an adult. But I think we were within our 10th year of our class reunion. And Jan came over to me, and I sort of looked the other way. But Jan came over, put her arms around me, and said, "I'm sorry." We were in our 20s by then, and Jan still remembered. I thought she'd probably forgotten. I'd never forgotten. Jan and I are very good friends today. Agree with thine adversary quickly. That's one of the biblical scriptures that I chose when I think about forgiveness, because sometimes things happen. Stuck people stick people. You've probably heard hurt people hurt people. Stuck people stick people. And if we put ourselves in the other person's shoes and try to understand where they may be coming from, maybe something happened in their life, like Jan, for example, that made her be a bully. And so we have to exercise unconditional love and forgiveness and agree with thine adversary quickly. As soon as Jane embraced me, I embraced her, and all was forgiven. The best way, now I was always last word Lucy when I was a little kid. My mother called me last word Lucy. I was very argumentative with my mother, sassy, and especially when my dad wasn't around, and I would say things and he thought I was an angel. Well, I read somewhere the best way to get the last word is to apologize, to ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it does enlarge your future. And I can think of many instances in relationships that have gone south in my case, where I have been able to forgive myself and then tell the person, I love you and I'm so sorry for anything that I may have done to upset you. There is an old poem that I love, someone gave me years ago. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. Love and I had the wit to win. I drew a circle and took him in. That's true forgiveness. So it's true, when we don't forgive, we hold on to this hardness in our heart, and it becomes like a tumor or a cancer, and it eats away at us. The other person probably may remember some things, but they've probably gone on about their business. Like me, they may just avoid that person. But you have that tumor. Jan obviously had that sense of heaviness, for she knew that she had not been kind, and she wanted to make amends. She wanted to be forgiven. And first, I'm sure she had to forgive herself. But when you do let go of that, it's like getting rid of that tumor, that hurt, that hardness, and you set a prisoner free, and the prisoner is you. You are carrying around this hate, this hurt, this anger, this bitterness, and you need to release it and let it go. I read somewhere, and I was always one who wanted to be right. I would argue to the ends of the world. Great debater in high school. I could argue you until you just fall out and say, okay, I give in. But I learned somewhere that it's best to be happy than to be right. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? So in relationships, there are times when you know you are absolutely right and this person is absolutely wrong, and you're not going to let them go. You're not going to let them get away with it. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? That's the question you ask yourself. So today, this afternoon, you have the opportunity to see this in action. I know you've heard of Dr. Wayne Dyer. Dr. Wayne Dyer is a noted author, wonderful speaker. You see him a lot on PBS. He's been here at Unity Temple before. I fell in love with the man when he was here. If I weren't married, I would have asked for his hand. He has a movie, My Greatest Teacher, and in the bulletin we were going to show The Magic Hand of Chance. But because Duke chose this topic today, it's all relative, I think My Greatest Teacher will really hit home what we're talking about here. The power of forgiveness, the power of love, the power of knowing who you are. You are a child of God. You represent the kingdom. You are. That's what you are. You are love. And you are that forgiving power of love. So join us this afternoon at 11:45 in Space and hear what Dr. Dyer's experience was, which was a huge life-changing experience, and the power of forgiveness in relationships.
Well, I ditto Sandra Carroll. The quote that I contributed on the front of your bulletin is from Confucius. Well, who else? I have to stay in character, don't I? So here goes. Confucius said, "The things that are done, there is no need to speak about. The things that are past, there is no need to blame." This is the wisdom of letting go. This is the wisdom of forgiveness. Somehow, this seems to be in contradiction with my action since I wrote my memoir and published it in the last 2 years in English, Chinese, and in Spanish. I wrote of my very difficult relationship with my mother and the lessons that resulted. Can we agree that the most influential person to us during our childhood is the parent who is of the same gender as ourselves? To a girl, is her mother. To a boy, is his father. According to my mother, everything about me was wrong, 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 beginning with my birth. Would you help me with this? Sure. First, I was born the wrong gender. I was not the boy that she wanted. And all her life, she told me that I was her greatest disappointment, and she never let me forget it. Second wrong, I was born during the war. China and Japan were at war, and in Europe, it was the invasion of Poland by the Nazis that started the Second World War. She often said to me, "How inconsiderate could you be?" Third, my mother told me that I was born as ugly as a monkey. She held no hope that any man would want to marry me. Therefore, I would be destined to live the life of a spinster, a fate almost worse than death, because I would remain a useless mouth for my parents to feed. But there was nothing I could do to rectify my first two wrongs, being a girl, inconveniently born during the war, during the Second World War. But on the third wrong, I vowed that I would not become a useless mouth for my parents to feed. My only way out was a college education that would enable me to make my own living. My saving grace came in the form of a devout Buddhist nanny who taught me that the difficult person in our lives is often our most valuable teacher. To counteract my mother's mean words, my nanny told me to watch the ducks swimming in the pond in search for food. When they get back on dry land, they shake off all the water, then they are no longer wet or dirty. So I learned to be a duck. I shook off my mother's judgment and negative prophecies. This is the most valuable lesson from my nanny. So let go of unkind words in all relationships. Be a duck. At the same time, she taught me to make a conscious decision to use words that are positive and gentle, loving and kind, complimentary and encouraging, words of approval we all seek. Mark Twain once said, most of us can run all day on one good compliment. He understood that encouragement is as vital to the soul as oxygen is to the body. I encourage you to use good words because what you say has a way of becoming reality in your life, and what you say influences your relationships with all the people around you. This is the power of your word. So say good words, and I wish you peace in every step of your life.
Thinking for a moment about intimate relationships, committed relationships, I want to name that the first rule of that is to hold out for someone who will laugh at your junior high humor. Marlene, to whom I have been married for over 27 years, is thinking, don't encourage him. The second rule is for each person in the relationship to believe that they got the better deal. I feel like bookends with Ed because the first thing that came to mind when Duke invited me to be a part of the panel was the Shakespearean quote that he borrowed from the Greeks, to thine own self be true. And there's a sense in which that's where relationship begins. It begins with hearing that authentic voice within. A little bit of my story. I graduated from the University of Kansas in chemical engineering a long time ago. And on graduation, I told my mother, well, now I know what I don't want to do. Apologies. And I did a 180 turn and taught chemistry in Kenya in the Peace Corps. I came back and did another 180 turn, don't keep track of the math, by the way, and entered seminary and served in parish ministry for about 16 years. Then I decided to turn another 180 degrees and went back to graduate school, and I have been in private practice in psychotherapy for at least 16 years. What's true is I had no clue about who I was when I was in college, obviously. And it seems like listening to that still small voice at different times in my life has helped me to more exactly or more harmoniously hear that voice and manifest that voice in the world. And so it seems to me that authentic relationships, whether it is in long-term committed relationships, whether it is in casual relationships with people driving by me or on the other side of the counter, it begins with that sense of authentic relationship, that sense of deep self, that Christ mind, that Buddha nature, that imago Dei or image of God, that still small voice in each of us that can speak over and over again and then allow us to be really authentically present with whomever we are with. An example of that, and I guess one of the other things I want to say about that is the big tasks in life are never done. They're never done. The becoming that authentic self is an ongoing process that I hope to be engaged in to the end of my life. Just this last year, I went off with 11 strangers to the mountaintop to do a soul quest. and with full support and encouragement from Marlene. Just recently, she returned from a 10-day trip to a workshop. Each of us taking those opportunities to reach out and listen for. And that happens in many different ways. That happens in terms of coming and hearing spiritual messages here. It happens in reading books. It happens in mindful meditation. It takes on many forms in educational videos. But I invite you to continue to quiet yourself enough to hear those still small voices that have been directing you always, and continue to do so. And indeed, the rewards are peace and harmony.
Well, I thank our guests for sharing this morning. And just one side note, in regards to Bambi Shen, the little girl who was seen as an ugly monkey in her mother's eyes, it turned out to be not only one of the most beautiful people I've ever met, but also she dated Elvis Presley. True story. Thank you. We'll now move into meditation. So let's just take the words of wisdom that we've heard this morning, allow ourselves to move into a place of silence, a place of serenity, a place where we can just rest with our existence and be happy that we're alive, be happy that we are the person we are, and be happy that we're in this moment right here and now, in the silence. And we go forth today to put into every relationship a peaceful heart, accepting others without harsh judgments, and expressing appreciation for individuality. And so it is.
Peace I give to you, my friends. Peace the world cannot give. Peace I give to you, my friends. Now your life is complete. Now your life is complete.
We are blessed. Amen.